The sound of running water echoed from the master bathroom, splashing loudly like an endless torrential downpour, isolating two completely different worlds. I was sitting at my vanity applying a clay face mask when a phone buzzed on the counter. It was not mine. It was Carter's. We had been married for 3 years, and to me, his entire existence was practically transparent, including his privacy. I knew his passcode, and my fingerprint was registered on his device. This was not to monitor him, but simply to handle the endless stream of trivial matters he always dumped on me. Just like right now. A text message popped up on the screen from his older brother, Ryan. Mom is short $10,000 for her medical bills. Can I borrow it from your end for a bit? I will pay you back next month. I picked up the phone, unlocked it with a blank expression, opened the banking app, and wired the $10,000 via Zelle. In the past, I was the one who funded Carter's tech startup. I was the one who paid all the household expenses. Naturally, whenever his family had an emergency, I was the one footing the bill. I was the chief financial officer of this family, and their only stable cash cow. Before I could even exit the transfer confirmation screen, a new iMessage popped up without warning. The contact name was saved as sister-in-law Chloe. Hubby, the baby is missing you so much today in my tummy. Right below the text was a photo. Under dim yellow hotel lighting, a woman's swollen pregnant belly took up the entire frame. A hand with dusty rose nail polish was gently stroking the curve of her stomach. The background featured messy, rumpled hotel bedsheets. Time seemed to freeze at that exact moment. The sound of the shower in the bathroom grew incredibly distant. My stomach violently churned. The herbal, earthy scent of my face mask, mixed with the steam drifting from the bathroom, suddenly smelled like a sickeningly sweet stench. My fingertips turned ice cold, and the phone nearly slipped from my grasp. But I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not even make a single unnecessary movement. As a top-tier corporate audit director, I had handled financial discrepancies worth billions of dollars and dealt with countless treacherous business partners. Emotion was the very first variable I was trained to eliminate in my line of work. In that split second, my professional instincts completely crushed my instincts as a wife. Step 1. Screenshot. I took a crystal-clear capture of that message and the belly photo. Step 2. Forward. I forwarded the screenshot through an encrypted channel to a private Dropbox account that no one else knew about. This cloud drive held the backup files for all the most critical projects of my career. Today, it gained a new folder titled Liquidation. Step 3. Delete. I held down on the message and tapped delete. Chloe's chat history vanished from Carter's phone completely, as if it had never existed. All of this took less than 10 seconds. My heart was beating so fast it felt like it would shatter my ribs, but my hands were as steady as bedrock. Just as I was about to put the phone back, a thought struck me like lightning. The first rule of auditing is that a single piece of evidence lacks decisive power. You must form a complete chain of evidence. If there was one message, there had to be more. The shower was still running. That was my countdown timer. I took a deep breath and opened the file manager on Carter's phone. He was a man with very little creativity. A locked folder named Project Files caught my attention. His shell of a startup had absolutely zero classified project files worth protecting. It required a passcode. I tried our wedding anniversary. Incorrect. His birthday. Incorrect. My birthday. Still incorrect. I sneered coldly. He really never failed to disappoint me. I typed in the PIN code for his company's corporate bank account, a random string of numbers I had personally set up for him. The folder unlocked instantly. There were no documents inside. Instead, there was an overwhelming flood of photos and videos. All of them featured him and Chloe. They were on our marital bed, in the back seat of his Range Rover, on the leather sofa in his office, and even in our living room while I was away on business trips. Chloe smiled with gentle satisfaction, sporting a pregnant belly at various different stages of growth. The background of these photos featured the very curtains and decor I had personally picked out. Every single photo was like a poison-laced dagger, stabbing with absolute precision into the marriage I had blindly believed in for 3 years. I had no time to process the disgust and fury. I swiftly selected all the files and initiated an encrypted upload. The tiny blue progress bar on the screen became the most terrifying countdown in the world. 50%. 70%. The water in the bathroom abruptly stopped. My heart skipped a beat, and I could almost hear the roar of blood rushing to my head. 90%. The sound of the doorknob turning clicked. 100%. Upload complete. I exited the folder at lightning speed, cleared all background app records, locked the screen, and placed the phone exactly where I found it. Then, I sat perfectly straight in front of the mirror, adjusting the cold clay mask on my face. The entire process was as fluid as running water, without a single wasted movement. Carter walked out wrapped in a towel, water dripping from his hair onto the hardwood floor. Seeing me, he flashed his habitual, eager-to-please smile. "Doing a face mask, honey?" he asked. While aggressively drying his hair, he threw a seemingly casual glance at his phone on the vanity. I peeled off the mask, revealing a completely expressionless face beneath it. Then I stood up, poured a glass of warm water from the kitchen, and handed it to him. My voice was as calm as if I were delivering a quarterly earnings report. "Your brother asked to borrow some money earlier. I transferred it for you." A flash of panic crossed Carter's eyes. He took the water glass with one hand while his other hand snatched the phone with lightning speed. He unlocked it and swiped frantically through his messages. When he saw that the conversation with Ryan ended at the successful Zelle transfer, and that Chloe's chat was completely empty, he visibly breathed a massive sigh of relief. That look of surviving a near-death experience was clearly reflected in my dark pupils. He looked up and gave me what he thought was a flawless, loving smile. "Thanks for the hard work, honey. You are always the best to me." I looked at him and curled the corners of my lips slightly, putting on the standard, perfect smile of a devoted wife. In my mind, however, I was coldly calculating. 3 days from now was the Sunday family dinner at the estate to celebrate Chloe reaching her 6-month pregnancy milestone. Perfect. I would schedule this project to close in exactly 3 days. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting mottled shadows across the dining table. Just like always, I prepared Carter's favorite over-easy eggs and bacon, toasted 2 slices of whole wheat bread, and poured a glass of fresh orange juice. Everything on the table was identical to the past 1,000 days, except for my heart. It had turned into a cold stone, resting motionless in my chest. The doorbell rang at the most inappropriate time. Carter went to open it. Chloe stood at the door. She wore a cream-colored maternity dress, her long hair draped over her shoulders, and a gentle, graceful smile on her face. She carried a delicate bakery box in her hand. Upon seeing me, she called out affectionately, "Jessica, I baked some cranberry cookies. I know they are your favorite, so I brought some over." The sweet scent of her perfume subtly overlapped with the lingering scent of Carter's body wash from last night. It was the exact same brand, a cheap scent filled with undisguised, adulterous intention. Carter eagerly took the box and held her arm, treating her as if she were made of fragile porcelain. "You are too kind, Chloe. You shouldn't have walked all the way over here with that heavy belly." "It is fine, just treat it as my morning walk," Chloe said. Her gaze bypassed Carter and landed on me, carrying a hidden trace of flaunting and scrutiny. I smiled, stood up, and pulled out a chair for her. "Please sit down, Chloe. Thanks for making the trip." The breakfast table became a stage for 3 people. Chloe and Carter exchanged flirtatious glances with almost zero hesitation. She whined playfully about her severe morning sickness, and Carter immediately handed her a glass of warm water with deep concern. She mentioned craving pastries from a new bakery downtown, and Carter instantly promised to buy them that afternoon. Under the table, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Chloe's foot gently rubbing against Carter's pant leg. Carter's body stiffened for a second, before he casually shifted slightly away. I slowly and methodically cut the over-easy egg on my plate. The golden yolk flowed out slowly, looking like a pool of coagulated blood. I wiped the corners of my mouth with a napkin, looked up, and let my gaze rest gently on Chloe's stomach. "Your bump is really showing now, Chloe. It is quite pointed. It is highly likely a boy. Ryan must be absolutely thrilled." My tone was filled with genuine blessing. Every word was pronounced clearly and perfectly. Chloe's hand, which was stroking her belly, paused. Carter's motion of lifting his coffee mug also froze. "Let us hope so." Chloe quickly regained her composure, smiling even more gently. "Whether it is a boy or a girl, it is still our family's flesh and blood. Your older brother will love it either way." "Of course," I nodded in agreement, then looked at Carter. Right, honey? Ryan has been waiting for this baby for so long. Carter forced a smile that looked uglier than someone crying. Yeah, Ryan will definitely be happy. The breakfast concluded in a bizarrely harmonious atmosphere. After Chloe left, I put on my tailored business suit just like normal, picked up my car keys, and said to Carter, I am heading to the office. I have a late board meeting tonight, so I might be home after dark. All right, take care, honey. Carter eagerly kissed my cheek. His lips were warm, but that warmth felt like a cold snake slithering across my skin, sending a violent shiver down my spine. I drove out of the garage, but I did not head to my corporate office. Instead, I made a U-turn at the next intersection and drove straight to the downtown Chicago business district. My destination was a top-tier law firm. Daniel, a powerhouse corporate attorney, was a college classmate of mine and my trusted legal advisor for all corporate matters over the years. Divorce. Daniel pushed up his wire-rimmed glasses, his gaze as sharp as a scalpel behind the lenses. Carter is cheating. I did not answer yes or no. Instead, I laid out my demands like a project checklist. First, I need to achieve absolute separation of all marital assets within 3 days, using a legal method that will not arouse his suspicion. Second, I want absolute controlling stakes over Carter's company, or I want him to shoulder every single penny of corporate debt himself. Third, I want him walking away with absolutely nothing. And I want both him and his mistress to pay a price far heavier than just the divorce itself. I pulled a file out of my designer bag. It was a comprehensive list of family assets I had stayed up all night compiling. Every property deed, stock portfolio, mutual fund, and cash flow was clearly annotated. The sources and ownership were completely transparent. Everyone in Carter's family thought I was just a money-making tool. They had no idea that an auditor's sacred duty is liquidation. Daniel looked over the spreadsheet, his frown deepening. Jessica, 90% of your household assets are under your name or practically controlled by you. But as for Carter's tech startup, even though you provided the seed funding, he is the legal representative. You injected $4 million into that company last year. Right now, on paper, it is operating at a massive deficit. I responded coldly. I already looked into it. He embezzled nearly $1.5 million of company funds to buy Chloe a luxury condo in Lincoln Park, along with various designer goods. The rest of the money was squandered on useless networking and terrible investments. The company is nothing but an empty shell now, and it still owes the bank a $1 million business loan. Daniel's expression turned severe. Corporate embezzlement combined with bank fraud. Jessica, are you trying to send him to federal prison? I only want back what is rightfully mine, and I want the people who made mistakes to face the consequences. I picked up the coffee in front of me and took a sip. The coffee was bitter, but it made my mind incredibly sharp. 3 days is extremely tight, Daniel pondered. Unless he willingly signs an agreement that is overwhelmingly disadvantageous to him. He will. A cold arc formed at the corner of my mouth, because greed and a guilty conscience make the best bait. By the time I left the law firm, I had already received the first draft of the legal agreements from Daniel on my phone. My plan now had its strongest legal foundation. All I had to do was wait for the prey to willingly walk into the trap I had meticulously built for him. On the drive back to the suburbs, I did not immediately pull into my garage. Instead, I parked in a secluded corner just outside our gated community. I needed more evidence. Evidence more direct and undeniable than those photos and videos. Carter was cautious. He deleted his text messages, but he overlooked the digital ghosts that surrounded him everywhere. I opened the smart home application on my phone. I had designed this entire system myself and held supreme administrative privileges. I pulled up the security camera footage from the living room and master bedroom over the past 3 months. Most of the time, the frames were empty, or just showed Carter and me living our mundane daily lives. I fast-forwarded like a completely emotionless censor, reviewing my own blinded existence. Finally, on an afternoon when I had flown out to London for a business trip, 2 figures appeared in the living room camera. Carter and Chloe. They were kissing and hugging on the sofa as if they owned the place. Chloe nestled in Carter's arms, stroking her belly, a look of blissful dreaming on her face. Carter lowered his head and kissed her stomach, his eyes full of absolute adoration. I downloaded the full video, tagged it with the date, and uploaded it to my secure cloud drive. That was not enough. I connected to the integrated dashcam in Carter's Range Rover. Through the cloud, I also had supreme access to this. He had a habit of calling Chloe from his car, thinking it was a completely private sanctuary. I pulled up the driving audio logs from the past week. After some static noise, their voices came through loud and clear. "Hubby, when are you going to bring up the divorce with Jessica? The baby is getting bigger every day." "I do not want him to be born illegitimate," came Chloe's delicate, whiny voice. "Just wait a little longer, baby." Carter's voice was full of soothing reassurance. "Jessica does not suspect a thing right now. My company still needs her capital to stay afloat. Once I get the real power of the company and transfer all the assets she holds into my hands, I will kick her to the curb. When that happens, our family of 3 can finally be together in the open. Then what about your older brother? Ryan is a pathetic loser. He still thinks the kid is his. He is waiting around every day like a happy idiot. When the time is right, we will just hand him some cash and tell him to get lost. You and the baby are my only real family, Chloe." The recording ended with the sickening sound of them kissing. I finished listening with zero expression on my face. I saved the audio files one by one. Every single file was a sharp blade aimed straight at their throats. But the most fatal recording happened just 3 days ago. On their way back from the obstetrics clinic, Chloe was speaking with a crying tone. "Carter, the doctor said today that based on the ultrasound, the due date is next month. But I have only been married to your brother for 8 months. What if he gets suspicious?" Carter impatiently comforted her. "What are you scared of? We will just tell him the baby is premature. He does not have the brains to do the math. Besides, hasn't he always had medical issues? He will be thanking God that you even managed to get pregnant. He would never dare to doubt if the kid is actually his. Right? Of course I am right. This is my kid. He's going to carry my name and inherit the family trust one day." The recording abruptly cut off there. I locked my phone and leaned quietly against the driver's seat, watching the people walking by outside the window. The sun was glaring, but I felt absolutely zero warmth. So, in their eyes, I was nothing but an ATM. The older brother, Ryan, was just a convenient scapegoat. The two of us were merely stepping stones on their path to a happy life. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Fury and sorrow surged up like a tidal wave, only to be forcefully suppressed back down. Now was not the time to drown in emotions. I had mapped out a crystal-clear plan, a revenge strategy titled Asset Liquidation. Core objective: execute a public execution of Carter and Chloe at the family dinner in 3 days. Execution steps. Step 1. Utilize information asymmetry to manipulate Carter into signing a post-nuptial asset division agreement and uncontested divorce papers. Step 2. Strip Carter's company of all high-quality assets, leaving all the debt and legal liabilities entirely on him. Step 3. Force Ryan to face reality, turning him into the final straw that crushes them. Step 4. Detonate every single bomb while the entire family is present, leaving them completely ruined and possessing absolutely nothing. I restarted the engine. The last trace of hesitation vanished from my eyes. This battle was not just about getting a divorce. I was going to make them pay a brutal, agonizing price for their stupidity and greed. I was going to take back everything I had ever given them, including the money, the status, and the so-called family they had so recklessly trampled over. I pressed the gas pedal, and the car glided smoothly into the underground garage. It was time for the show to begin. That evening, I did not retreat to my home office to work late as usual. Instead, I sat on the living room sofa, spreading out several documents on the coffee table. My face carried a perfectly crafted look of heavy anxiety and worry. Carter walked out of the bedroom after finishing a video game. Seeing my posture, he casually asked, "What is wrong, honey? Work not going well?" I looked up, my eyes bloodshot through careful acting, my voice laced with exhaustion and a slight rasp. "Carter, come here for a second. I need to discuss something extremely serious with you." Seeing my solemn expression, he dropped his goofy demeanor and sat down next to me. I handed him a forged internal corporate email. The subject line read, "Urgent notification regarding financial compliance audit of executive management and immediate family assets. My corporation is undergoing a massive internal audit by the SEC and the board," I sighed. Pinching the bridge of my nose with perfect timing. They are investigating heavily. A few senior executives have already been suspended because their spouses run businesses and they cannot properly explain the source of their assets. I am terrified this is going to drag our family down. Carter's face instantly changed color. Nobody knew better than him what a financial dumpster fire his own company was. His company had been heavily funded by our marital assets. If investigators dug into it, the tangled web of finances would never survive the scrutiny. Then, what do we do? He rubbed his hands together nervously. Will they audit my company's accounts? Absolutely, I said, with absolute certainty. It was a reassurance and a hammer blow all at once. But do not panic. I have thought of a way to bypass the risk. What way? He looked at me desperately, like a drowning man grabbing for a lifeline. I picked up the legal documents prepared by Daniel's firm and handed them over. At the very top, printed in bold black letters, were the words, Post-Nuptial Asset Division Agreement. To protect our family wealth, we need to legally separate our assets right now. I pointed to the clauses, explaining in my most professional tone. Look, all the real estate, stock portfolios, and mutual funds under our names will temporarily be transferred solely to me. Your tech company, along with all its assets and liabilities, including the $1 million bank loan and commercial debts, will belong strictly to you. This way, when the auditors check my background, my personal assets will be clean, legal, and completely detached from your business. Even if they audit your company, it will be classified solely as your independent business venture. It won't implicate me, and more importantly, it won't touch our core family wealth. Carter's eyes lit up. He rapidly flipped through the agreement, a calculating look written all over his face. I continued adding pressure. Just doing an asset division isn't foolproof. The most bulletproof method is for us to get a paper divorce. Divorce? He jerked his head up in shock. Just on paper, I emphasized, my tone sincere, acting like a devoted wife, fighting for our shared future. We sign this agreement and file uncontested divorce papers at the county courthouse. That way, legally speaking, we are two entirely separate financial entities. Once this storm blows over, we will just remarry. By doing this, even if the sky falls on your company, the fire will not burn me. The foundation of our family will survive. Every single word I spoke stepped perfectly onto his weak points and his bottomless greed. 1. Protecting the money. He was terrified of being investigated, but he was even more terrified of losing his luxurious lifestyle. 2. A paper divorce. To him, this was a gift sent straight from heaven. He was just stressing about how to explain things to Chloe and how to legally hide the money. Now, I was the one suggesting a divorce. It was like handing a pillow to a sleepy man. He could use this chance to nominally become single, appease Chloe, dump his massive corporate debt onto me, and slowly scheme to steal the prime assets back. He thought I was playing on level 2, trying to protect the family. He thought he was playing on level 4, using the opportunity to transfer assets and hide his mistress. He had no idea I was sitting in the stratosphere, watching him confidently march straight into the grave I had dug for him. Carter's Adam's apple bobbed. He tried hard to suppress his wild inner ecstasy, forcing a conflicted, reluctant expression onto his face. Honey, this does not feel right. Getting a fake divorce over money just hurts our relationship too much. Is this the time to talk about feelings? I raised my voice, faking desperate anxiety. This is about protecting everything we have worked so hard to build. Carter, do you really want to see us lose everything overnight just because of a corporate audit? I stared at him, my eyes shining with absolute determination and self-sacrifice for the sake of our home. He fell silent, lowering his head to read the agreement again. An agreement labeled as a risk avoidance strategy that was actually an exit with zero assets contract. I knew he was tempted. Greed is the sharpest needle to pop any disguise. Carter paced the living room with the papers all night. I knew he wasn't hesitating. He was weighing the pros and cons. Or rather, he was consulting his strategist. Sure enough, in the middle of the night, while I feigned deep sleep, I heard him sneak out to the balcony, keeping his voice to a whisper on the phone. I didn't need to hear it to know Chloe was on the other line. She brought it up herself, said it was to avoid some corporate audit. I read all the documents. The house, cars, and savings go to her. The company and the debts go to me. A fake divorce. I actually think this is the perfect opportunity. Once we divorce, I am a free man. I could not hear what Chloe said, but Carter's voice grew increasingly excited. You are exactly right. This is a godsend. Jessica is such an idiot. She thinks she is being so clever, but she is literally handing me my freedom on a silver platter. Once the divorce is finalized, the company is legitimately mine. Then I will figure out a way to slowly drain the cash she is holding on to. Eventually, it will all belong to us and the baby. Do not worry, you and the baby are my only priority. Once I handle all this, I will give you the massive wedding you deserve. Hanging up the phone, Carter returned to the bedroom, his footsteps noticeably lighter. Thinking I was asleep, he leaned over and kissed my forehead. The cold sensation made me physically nauseous. In the dark, I opened my eyes. I was wide awake. The next morning, Carter acted like a man who had made a massive sacrifice. He placed the signed agreements in front of me, wearing an expression of tragic heroism for the sake of the family. Honey, I thought about it all night. You are right. For our family, I am willing to sign. He grabbed my hand, speaking with profound emotion. I just feel terrible that you have to carry the title of a divorcee for a while. As long as our hearts are still together, none of that matters. I played along, letting my eyes turn slightly red. We were silently playing the roles of a deeply devoted couple making sacrifices for love, each secretly calculating our own ultimate victory. To make the act flawless, I immediately contacted Daniel and arranged to meet at his downtown office that afternoon to notarize the signatures and prepare the court filings. That afternoon, in the solemn conference room of Daniel's law firm, Daniel acted as the witnessing attorney, reading out the core clauses word by word. Both parties mutually agree that the marital property located in Lake Forest, all vehicles, and all stock portfolios, mutual funds, and bank deposits registered under Jessica's name, totaling approximately $8 million, shall belong solely to the female party, Jessica. The entity known as Apex Tech Solutions, including 100% of its equity, alongside all corporate assets and liabilities, including but not limited to the $1 million bank loan and other commercial debts, shall belong solely to the male party, Carter. Both parties confirm that outside of this division, there are no other financial disputes. Effective upon the signing of this agreement, all future debts and liabilities shall be borne individually. With every clause read, Carter's eyelid twitched, but the moment he remembered this was just a temporary shield, that he would soon be flying high with Chloe, and that he could slowly siphon my money away later, he suppressed his greed. Chloe's pillow talk was the ultimate assist. She had urged him to dump me as fast as possible to make room for her and their child. Daniel finally asked, Mr. Carter, do you confirm that all the above clauses represent your true intentions? And are you fully aware of the legal consequences? Carter took a deep breath, looking as though he had made a monumental decision. He picked up the pen and signed his name at the bottom of the agreement. I confirm. The moment ink met paper, I saw a flash of immense relief and hidden triumph in his eyes. He thought he was signing a ticket to freedom and unimaginable wealth. He had no idea he had just signed an irrevocable death sentence that would drag him straight to hell. I picked up another pen and calmly signed my name. Jessica. The pen scratched against the heavy paper, sounding like a cold, ruthless rest note at the end of this absurd marriage. 3 copies were made. Carter and I each kept one, and the law firm filed the third. Walking out of the high-rise building, the sun was shining brightly. Carter even reached out to hold my hand, smiling. Honey, once this blows over, I am going to throw you an even grander vow renewal ceremony. Sounds great, I smiled back, while my mind counted down the hours. Just 2 days until the family dinner. With the papers signed, Carter seemingly dropped his act and grew increasingly distant. He stopped coming home for dinner, using urgent company business and networking as his excuse. I knew he was at Chloe's apartment. On Friday afternoon, while I was reviewing an audit report, Chloe called me. Her voice sounded incredibly weak and delicate. Jessica? I have a prenatal checkup today, and I am feeling really dizzy. Ryan is out of town on business again. Could you ask Carter to come with me to the hospital? It was the most ridiculous request in the world, asking her sister-in-law's husband to take her to an OB/GYN appointment. In the past, I would have found it absurd. Now, I just saw it as evidence hand-delivered to my doorstep. Of course, Chloe. Your health comes first. I will have him head over right now. I agreed instantly, my tone dripping with concern. Hanging up, I texted Carter. Chloe is feeling sick. She asked if you could take her to the hospital. Hurry up and go. Ryan isn't home, so it is only right that we take care of her. I even added a polite, drive safe. I played the role of the perfect, understanding, big-picture wife, personally pushing him right into another woman's arms. Half an hour later, I drove to the private Northwestern hospital. I did not go inside. I parked at a Starbucks across the street, aiming a massive telephoto camera lens squarely at the hospital entrance. Soon enough, Carter's Range Rover pulled up. He jumped out frantically, ran to the passenger side, and carefully helped Chloe out. The look in his eyes was a level of extreme anxiety and tenderness I had never received. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder, constantly guarding her stomach. The two walked into the lobby looking intimately close. I calmly pressed the shutter, capturing every single moment in high definition. In the crisp photos, Carter's devotion and Chloe's reliance were blindingly obvious. Perfect evidence. I sat in the Starbucks for 2 hours, clearing out my work emails until they reappeared in my viewfinder. Chloe's face was glowing with sheer happiness. She held an ultrasound printout, showing it off to Carter like an excited little girl. Carter reached out and affectionately tapped her on the nose. I took it all in, packed my camera into my bag, paid the tab, and left. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Chloe had posted a story. It was a selfie showing the side of her face against the hospital corridor backdrop. The caption read, "The best kind of companionship brings peace of mind." Most importantly, the privacy settings showed this was posted exclusively for me to see. It was a naked provocation. She was asserting her dominance, bragging that she had stolen my husband. She thought I was completely in the dark. She thought I was still the clueless fool she could play like a fiddle. I stared at the screen with absolute apathy. I even reached out and double-tapped to like it, leaving a comment below. Indeed. Have a safe trip. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat and focused on driving. Chloe probably thought it was a sweet blessing for her and the baby's journey. Only I knew I was wishing her and Carter a safe trip down the road to utter destruction I had paved for them. Have a safe trip, you absolute degenerates. With Carter handled, the next target was Ryan. Older brother Ryan was the only person in the family who treated me reasonably well. He was honest, hardworking, and simple-minded. But that simple nature was exactly why he was so easily deceived and used. I could not just hand him the truth. Given his personality, he would likely explode on the spot, ruining my entire timeline. I needed him to discover the truth himself, to generate his own suspicion, and to hunt down the cruel answer with his own hands. Only a wound he ripped open himself would hurt deeply enough to make his retaliation completely merciless. On Saturday morning, I asked Ryan to meet me at a local coffee shop. He had just returned from his business trip, looking exhausted but radiating the joy of a soon-to-be father. "What is up, Jessica? Did you need something?" I did not beat around the bush. I pulled a beautifully packaged gift envelope from my bag and slid it across the table. Ryan, a friend of mine, is an executive at a premium diagnostic clinic downtown. I bought 2 top-tier comprehensive health screening packages for you and Chloe. I smiled warmly. Chloe is pregnant, so her health is the priority. But you too. You are about to be a father. You need a solid health foundation to have the energy to raise a kid. Ryan looked a bit embarrassed and tried to decline. "Oh, you shouldn't have spent so much money. We are both perfectly healthy. It is just a small gesture," I insisted firmly, pushing the envelope back into his hands. Then I casually flipped open the clinic's brochure, pointing to a specific page. This clinic is standard in most areas, but their urology, genetics, and male fertility departments are nationally ranked. A lot of couples go there before planning a family because their tests are incredibly accurate. Ryan, you should get checked out too. Consider it prep work for making sure the baby gets the best genetics. I deliberately emphasized the words fertility department. Ryan was a simple man, but he was not stupid. The implication in my words was like a tiny needle, pricking right into his heart. His smile froze, and a complex array of emotions flashed through his eyes. I knew his family had a long-standing rumor that Ryan had fertility issues. It was the reason he and Chloe had been married for 2 years before she finally got pregnant. Carter had even mocked this fact in the dashcam recording. "All right, Thank you, Jessica. Ryan took the envelope, looking visibly distracted. I stopped there. I didn't say another word on the topic, shifting the conversation to normal family gossip. After seeing Ryan off, I sent him a text. Ryan, the clinic's address and the reservation number are in the packet. I booked you an appointment with a specialist for Monday morning. Do not forget to go. Oh, and to ensure accurate results, the doctor recommended that couples get tested separately to avoid cross-contamination of samples. I had paved the entire road for him. I even eliminated the possibility of Chloe tagging along and interfering. The rest was entirely up to him. Sure enough, that same afternoon, I got a call from my friend at the clinic. Jessica, your brother-in-law just called to reschedule his appointment to this afternoon. He was extremely insistent on rushing the results. It is nothing, I replied calmly. He is just anxious to know his health status. Hanging up the phone, I knew the fish had taken the bait. Once Ryan's suspicion was planted, it would grow wildly like weeds. He was going to dig until he hit the bottom. On Sunday night, I received a text from Ryan. It contained only a few words. The results are in. I did not reply. A few minutes later, he sent another text. I did the fertility test. I'm 100% sterile. I also hired a private lab to run a covert DNA test using a hair from Carter and a swab from Chloe's recent blood work. Expedited. How fast can an expedited test get results? Looking at the text, I knew this chess piece was moving exactly along the trajectory I had designed, landing perfectly on the most critical square of the board. I replied with 3 words. I will arrange it. I immediately contacted a friend who was a director at a private lab, clearing all the red tape for Ryan's expedited DNA test. Everything was in place. Tomorrow was the family dinner. It would be their final celebration, and the grand, devastating trial I had prepared for them. By Monday evening, the Lake Forest estate was brightly lit. To celebrate Chloe's 6-month mark and take a 4-generation family portrait, my in-laws threw a lavish dinner party. When I arrived, the massive living room was already echoing with laughter. My mother-in-law was holding Chloe's hand, gently rubbing her belly, her face radiating anticipation for her grandson. Chloe, you are the absolute hero of this family. Look at this belly. It is definitely a big, strong boy. My father-in-law sat nearby, grinning ear to ear, clutching the paperwork for a newly opened $529 college savings plan with a massive initial deposit, preparing to give his unborn grandson an early welcome gift. Carter acted like the most devoted husband in the world, hovering around Chloe, asking if she was cold or thirsty, bringing her tea and snacks. The two of them frequently exchanged knowing glances, full of dreams for the future and absolute contempt for everyone else in the room. Only Ryan sat silently in the corner on a single sofa. His face was so dark, it looked like a thunderstorm was about to break. His teacup was empty, but he just stared dead ahead, as if nursing a deep, blood-soaked hatred. No one noticed his bizarre behavior. Everyone's focus was glued to Chloe and her priceless belly. I walked in wearing a perfectly tailored Chanel suit and immaculate makeup, carrying a thick manila folder. I gracefully stepped into the living room. Mom, Dad, Ryan, Chloe. I smiled and greeted everyone as if nothing was wrong. My mother-in-law's smile faded slightly upon seeing me. She gave a lukewarm response. Glad you made it. Take a seat. In her eyes, a daughter-in-law who couldn't bear children was completely overshadowed by the heroic Chloe. I placed the manila folder on the empty seat next to me and sat down calmly. The food was served quickly. A massive table full of expensive delicacies. My in-laws constantly scooped the best cuts of meat onto Chloe's plate. Carter stood by, carefully removing bones from a piece of fish for her. The family looked perfectly harmonious, like a picture of domestic bliss. Ryan and I were the only 2 out-of-place spectators in this beautiful painting. I looked at the feast with 0 emotion. I didn't even feel nauseous. I calmly ate my food, replenishing my energy, preparing for the brutal war ahead. During the meal, I even deliberately served Carter a piece of liver, a food he absolutely despised. I smiled and said, "Honey, you have been working so hard at the company lately. Eat up, you need your strength." A flash of disgust crossed Carter's face, but with everyone watching, he forced a touched expression and choked it down. The look on his face wanting to vomit but not daring to was the first comedy sketch of the night. Chloe spoke up in her sweet, delicate voice. Jessica is so good to Carter, unlike me. Ever since I got pregnant, I have been having mood swings. I am always making Ryan worry. She said this while playfully reaching out to link arms with Ryan. Ryan reacted as if he had been burned by fire. He violently yanked his arm back. The sheer force knocked over his wine glass. The sharp sound of shattering glass instantly silenced the entire dining room. Every single pair of eyes snapped to Ryan. "Ryan, what is wrong with you?" Carter asked, frowning. Ryan didn't say a word. He just raised his bloodshot eyes and locked them in a death stare on Chloe. He looked at her like she was a sworn, mortal enemy. Chloe felt a chill run down her spine under his gaze. She pouted, looking wronged. "Hubby, you scared me." All right, the mother-in-law interjected to smooth things over. Ryan has always been clumsy. Someone clean this up before it ruins the mood. A tiny storm was quickly swept under the rug. But no one noticed that beneath the table, my hand pressed the wake button on my phone. The screen lit up with a brand new text message. "Jessica, the DNA report is finalized. The digital copy has been emailed to you." I looked across the table at the two degenerates still making eyes at each other, and at my in-laws still dreaming of their perfect grandson. A freezing, cruel smile curled the corners of my lips. The final party was officially over. The dinner atmosphere remained awkwardly tense after Ryan's outburst. My in-laws tried desperately to liven things up. Carter and Chloe went back to acting out their loving routine, pretending the shattered glass was just a harmless accident. After a few more rounds of drinks, my father-in-law cleared his throat and stood up, raising his glass. "Today is a fantastic day," he said, his face red with joy. "Our family is finally expanding. Taking this opportunity, I want to officially announce something. I have finalized my will. 70% of all assets under my name will be inherited by my eldest grandson." He looked lovingly at Chloe's stomach. Carter and Chloe's faces instantly exploded with uncontrollable ecstasy. They locked eyes, seeing the raw greed and victory in each other's pupils. My mother-in-law laughed and agreed. "Of course! Everything in this family belongs to my precious grandson eventually." The living room was drowning in joy. I set down my fork, gently dabbed my mouth with a napkin, and slowly, unhurriedly stood up. "That was a lovely speech, Dad." My voice wasn't loud, but it clearly cut through the noise. "But before we celebrate the new baby, I have a matter of my own. I need to officially notify everyone of something." Everyone turned to look at me. Carter frowned, clearly annoyed by my sudden interruption. I ignored him. I casually picked up my phone and connected it to the massive OLED TV in the living room via AirPlay. The screen flashed, and a document was projected. The title of the document read, "Binding Postnuptial Asset, Separation Agreement and Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." The court accepted the filing for divorce yesterday. But more importantly, the postnup you eagerly signed is fully executed and effective immediately. Right after, the screen switched to another photo. Two green, hard-bound legal certificates proving the dissolution of marriage, sitting side by side. The entire living room plunged into a dead silence. The smiles on my in-laws' faces froze solid. Their wine glasses hovered mid-air. Chloe's smug look shattered. She stared at the screen in pure disbelief, looked at me, and then looked at Carter. "Jessica, have you lost your mind?" Carter was the first to react. He leaped up, pointing a trembling finger at me, roaring in panic. "You said this was fake. Why are you showing this right now?" He thought I was still acting, playing into our audit evasion narrative. I looked at him coldly, like watching a dancing clown. "Fake? Carter, do you think a judge's signature and a county court seal is a child's toy?" I picked up the remote and clicked to the next slide. The screen now displayed the postnuptial asset division agreement we had mutually signed and notarized. Every single critical clause was highlighted in glaring red ink. According to the legally binding agreement we voluntarily signed and filed, I spoke, my voice flat and icy, like an AI reading a verdict. "This estate you are sitting in right now, along with every bank account, stock portfolio, and mutual fund under your names, now legally belongs entirely to me as an individual." I paused, letting my gaze sweep over my in-laws, whose faces were entirely drained of blood. I spoke to them, enunciating every syllable. "Mom, Dad, The deed to this house is solely in my name. Consider this your formal 3-0. Day, notice to vacate. However, I am legally shutting off the electricity, water, and internet tomorrow morning, and the credit cards you use are already frozen. I highly suggest you pack your bags tonight. You venomous bitch! My mother-in-law finally snapped out of her shock. She pointed at me, her finger shaking violently like a leaf in the autumn wind. How has this family ever mistreated you? You are kicking us out onto the street? You have mistreated me in countless ways. Let's tally them up, one by one. I met her glare without an inch of retreat. First, we settle the money. Then, we settle the emotions. Because to all of you, isn't money more important than absolutely anything else? Carter panicked entirely. He lunged forward to grab my phone, but I sidestepped him easily. Jessica, you backstabbing liar! You tricked me into signing that contract, he screamed. His face contorted in rage. I tricked you? A terrifying laugh escaped my lips. But the humor never reached my eyes. Carter, you were simply too greedy. You thought I was helping you dodge an SEC audit. In reality, I was just cutting my losses. The second your pen hit that paper, you officially walked away with absolutely nothing. This first massive strike hit the entire family right in their vital organ. Money was their lifeblood. And I had just personally severed their main artery. The living room was dead, silent, save for the heavy, panicked breathing of Carter's family. The show had just begun. Jessica, what gives you the right to do this? We were married for 3 years. What gives you the right to swallow every single dime? Carter launched his final, desperate struggle, trying to guilt-trip me with morality and fake emotions. What gives me the right? I looked at him, my eyes filled with utter pity. Because every single penny of that money was earned by me. You are nothing but a parasite surviving off your wife's hard work. Bullshit, Carter roared, humiliated. My company. Your company? I cut him off, clicking the remote again. The TV screen shifted. This time, it displayed an iMessage screenshot. The exact screenshot I would never forget. Chloe's contact name, and that glaring, sickening text message. Hubby, the baby is missing you so much today in my tummy. Below it was the intimate, dimly lit belly photo. Carter's face instantly turned the color of chalk. He stumbled backward as if all the strength had been drained from his legs. Chloe shrieked in sheer terror. She instinctively covered her mouth, her body swaying as if she were about to collapse. My in-laws couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. My mother-in-law's voice pitched upward in confusion. What? What is this? Why is Chloe calling you hubby? I didn't answer her. I locked my gaze onto Chloe's ghostly white face. Chloe, I called her name softly, my voice as gentle as a blade coated in honey. Weren't you so curious why I suddenly wanted a divorce? I took a step forward, cornering her, and blasted the Range Rover's dashcam audio from my phone at max volume. Just wait a little longer, baby. Jessica does not suspect a thing right now. Once I get the real power of the company and transfer all the assets she holds into my hands, I will kick her to the curb. Carter's familiar voice echoed through the dead, silent living room. Every single word was a vicious slap ringing loudly across the faces of everyone in the room. My mother-in-law's lips trembled violently, staring in pure disbelief at her youngest son and her daughter-in-law. My father-in-law's face went from red to green, then to a sickly purple, his hand shaking so hard he almost dropped his wine glass. The audio continued playing. Ryan is a pathetic loser. He still thinks the kid is his. When the time is right, we will just hand him some cash and tell him to get lost. This recording was a nuclear warhead, obliterating whatever fake peace was left in the room. Ryan, who had remained perfectly silent until now, violently jerked his head up. His bloodshot eyes burned with a level of suppressed fury and humiliation that had reached its absolute breaking point. I stopped the audio. The living room was so quiet you could hear everyone's heart racing. I walked step by step toward Chloe, staring down at her. She shrank back in terror, but the sofa blocked her retreat. I leaned in and whispered in a voice only she and I could hear. When you posted that Instagram story to provoke me, did you feel really proud of yourself? Then, I stood up straight, facing the entire room. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was a death sentence. Chloe, would you mind explaining to the room right now? I pointed at the text message on the massive screen, asking with ice-cold precision. Why is your baby calling my ex-husband Daddy? My question was the key that finally unlocked Pandora's box. The sheer volume of information crashed the brains of everyone in the room. My mother-in-law pointed at Chloe, then at Carter, her lips quivering for an eternity, completely unable to form a single word. My father-in-law was shaking with rage, pointing at Carter and roaring, "You bastard! Look what you have done!" Chloe burst into theatrical tears. Crying beautifully, she grabbed Ryan's shirt, shaking her head frantically. "No! It is not true! Ryan, please believe me. It was Carter. He forced himself on me. You lying bitch!" Carter panicked. To save his own skin, he immediately threw her under the bus. "You were the one constantly seducing me. You sent me naked pictures. You said Ryan couldn't satisfy you, that I was a real man. You said you were pregnant with my kid and demanded I divorce Jessica to marry you." A disgusting, pathetic dogfight erupted right in the middle of the majestic living room. I stood on the sidelines, watching them tear each other apart, exposing their most grotesque, ugly layers. Just then, Ryan slowly stood up. His movements were incredibly slow, as if he were carrying a boulder on his back. He ignored Chloe's wailing and didn't spare a glance at Carter's frantic excuses. He just walked toward me, his footsteps heavy, step by excruciating step. Everyone thought he was going to scream at me, demanding to know why I exposed this. But he just reached out his hand and said in a low, hollow voice, "Give it to me." I knew exactly what he meant. I reached into my manila folder, pulled out a freshly printed document that was still warm from the machine, and placed it in his hand. The cover page was printed in bold black ink. Forensic Paternity DNA, Analysis Report. Ryan took the report. His knuckles turned white from gripping it so tightly. He didn't open it immediately. He turned around and walked to the exact center of the living room. He stood there like a silent, towering statue. His eyes slowly swept across every person in the room. The terrified Chloe, the desperately lying Carter, his parents, who looked like corpses. Then, using every ounce of strength in his body, he violently slammed the report onto the heavy mahogany coffee table. The sharp crack echoed like a gunshot, making everyone flinch. The report flipped open. The top page, displaying the final conclusion, was laid bare for all to see. Conclusion. Based on DNA analysis, Ryan is excluded as the biological father of the fetus. The results support Carter as the biological father of the fetus. Ironclad proof. The entire world seemed to stop spinning. A few seconds later, the suffocating, repressed rage finally detonated. Arg! Ryan unleashed a primal, animalistic roar. His eyes were blood red. He grabbed the edge of the heavy coffee table and completely flipped it over. The table full of expensive plates, glasses, and food shattered into a million pieces. Soup, wine, and glass shards exploded across the floor. "I will kill you, Carter," he roared, charging at his younger brother like a rabid bull. He threw a devastating right hook, smashing directly into Carter's face. Caught off guard, Carter saw stars, and blood instantly sprayed from his nose. "You animal. She is your sister-in-law. I am your flesh-and-blood brother." Ryan completely lost his mind, grabbing Carter by the collar and raining punches down on him like a meteor shower. He channeled years of being the nice guy, all his repression, grievances, and humiliation into pure lethal violence. The living room descended into absolute chaos, women screaming, men roaring, things smashing. It was a chaotic, absurd symphony. Seeing the DNA report, my mother-in-law's eyes rolled back in her head. She screamed, collapsed to the floor, and fainted on the spot. My father-in-law clutched his chest, gasping violently for air, pointing at his two sons beating each other to death. He couldn't form a single word, eventually sliding weakly onto the sofa. Checkmate. I had orchestrated a complete family wipeout. The entire household had collapsed overnight because of that single piece of paper. I stood at the edge of the wreckage, calmly observing the chaotic theater before me. My heart was as still as a frozen lake. I didn't lift a finger. I didn't even say another word. All I did was hand over the truth. And the truth itself was the sharpest butcher knife in existence. Ryan's explosive power was terrifying. When a perpetually repressed, honest man finally snaps, he is like an erupting volcano. Unstoppable. Carter was beaten so badly he couldn't even defend himself. He curled into a ball on the floor, rolling in the glass and blood, begging for his life. Ryan, stop. I am sorry. Ryan? Sorry? You fucked my wife and you tell me you are sorry? You made me a cuckold and you are sorry? Ryan's fists didn't slow down for a second. Chloe trembled violently in the corner. She didn't dare pull Ryan off him. She just screamed hysterically, "Stop hitting him! You are going to kill him!" The estate manager and the maids rushed into the room. It took 3 grown men to finally pull a completely feral Ryan off of Carter. Carter crawled up from the floor, his face covered in blood. He looked at his unconscious parents, his deranged brother, and this entire apocalypse directed entirely by me. He turned all his hatred toward me. "Jessica, you sick bitch. This is all you. You destroyed our family," he roared, his voice hoarse and broken. Before I could even respond, Chloe suddenly charged at Carter, pointing at his face through snot and tears, crying to Ryan. "Ryan, I swear it is not my fault. It was him. He stalked me. He threatened me using the company's money. I am just a weak woman. What could I do?" She desperately tried to frame herself as an innocent victim who was coerced, shifting every ounce of blame onto Carter. Hearing this, Carter got so angry he almost coughed up blood. To preserve his last shred of miserable dignity, he threw away whatever affection they had and bit right back. "You lying whore! You sent me naked pictures every single day. You told me Ryan was useless in bed. You said I was the only real man. You said once you gave birth to a son, the family inheritance would be ours. You told me Jessica was a barren hen who would get kicked out of the house eventually." Right in front of everyone, the two of them began viciously tearing into each other, exposing every dirty secret. The sweet nothings they once whispered in the dark became venomous arrows fired at each other's throats. One called the other a premeditated homewrecker. The other called him a money-grubbing predator. The scene was more entertaining than the trashiest reality TV show. I slowly walked over to a leather armchair and elegantly sat down. The terrified estate manager carefully handed me a cup of hot tea. I took it, gently blew on it, and took a sip. The tea was fragrant, crisp, and refreshing. I just sat there, watching the 2 clowns in the center of the room perform their grotesque circus act. Their curses, their blame-shifting, their sheer ugliness, none of it could create even a ripple in my heart anymore. The man I once loved and the sister-in-law I once respected were now nothing but filthy jokes. Ryan listened to them tear each other apart. The last trace of color drained from his face, leaving only the ashen gray of absolute despair. He probably never imagined that the wife he loved and the brother he raised possessed such demonic souls. The climax of the farce paused when Chloe, overly agitated, clutched her stomach and screamed in pain. Carter instinctively stepped forward to help her, but Ryan kicked him away. "Don't touch her with your filthy hands." In that moment, the so-called bonds of family and love were reduced to sheer mockery. I placed my teacup down and stood up. It was time to deliver the closing act of this tragedy. Looking at the absolute wreckage, Carter's family probably assumed this was the worst it could get. Stripped of all assets, brothers tearing each other apart, a massive ethical scandal. No. This was far from over. I pulled the final document from my manila folder. It was an official forensic accounting report generated by a top-tier Chicago accounting firm regarding Apex Tech Solutions' financials over the past 3 years. I walked up to Carter, who was still trembling from Ryan's death threats. "Carter," I spoke, my voice soft but carrying such weight that every eye locked onto me again. "Did you really think tonight was just a simple story about divorce and cheating?" I opened the thick audit report and flipped through the pages, displaying them right in front of his bloody face. "In your 3 years as the CEO of Apex Tech Solutions, you abused your executive power to wire company funds into private accounts exactly 37 times. The total amount embezzled is $1.5 million. Every time I read a number, Carter's face turned a shade paler. Of that money, you used $500,000 to buy Chloe a condo in Lincoln Park, paid in cash. The deed is in her name." I turned to Chloe, who was clutching her stomach, staring at me in sheer horror. "You used another $300,000 on designer bags, jewelry, and luxury clothes. The beneficiary was, again, Chloe. The remaining $700,000 was burned on your high-risk crypto investments and personal spending. The accounts are completely drained. I closed the folder, staring down at Carter, who now looked like a literal ghost, and delivered the final sentence. Carter, that was corporate capital, not your personal piggy bank. According to our divorce decree, you own 100% of that company. Therefore, you are solely responsible for its liabilities. Embezzling $1.5 million constitutes grand theft and wire fraud. I paused, sliding in the deadliest knife of all. Oh, right. The paperwork you submitted for that $1 million commercial bank loan contained severely falsified financial records. That constitutes federal bank fraud. With multiple felony charges stacked, Carter, do the math. How many decades will you be spending in federal prison? Carter completely collapsed onto the floor. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a terror he had never experienced in his life. No, Jessica, you cannot do this to me. We were married. You cannot. The moment you were rolling around in our marital bed with your sister-in-law, you should have realized we were no longer married. I cut him off, my tone devoid of a single degree of warmth. I turned to Chloe, who was shaking uncontrollably. And you, Chloe. You knowingly accepted embezzled corporate funds and used them for personal luxury. You are an accessory to the crime. Given that you are pregnant, you might avoid immediate jail time, but the feds will audit every single penny you own. I packed the documents neatly back into the folder, as if I had just completed a routine board meeting. Then, right in front of everyone, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The call connected. I used my calmest, most professional voice. Hello, this is the Lake Forest Police Department. I need to report a crime. I am at 1201 Shoreline Drive. I am reporting a suspect for grand theft, corporate embezzlement, and federal wire fraud. I have the complete chain of evidence. I hung up the phone. I looked at Carter and Chloe, sprawled on the floor, the same way a person looks at trash waiting for the garbage truck. I was not just divorcing them, I was personally sending them to federal prison. This was the true, final ending I had prepared for them. The police arrived quickly. When the uniformed officers walked into the lavish, destroyed living room, the final shred of the family's dignity was ripped to pieces. I handed over all the evidence, the forensic audit report, bank wire statements, and Carter and Chloe's text logs to the officers. The chain of evidence was flawless, airtight, and undeniable. Carter was arrested on the spot. As the steel handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he turned to me in a hysterical fit of rage, screaming, "Jessica, you will burn in hell for this. I will never let you go." I just watched him coldly, like looking at a complete stranger. Because Chloe was heavily pregnant, she was not placed in handcuffs, but she was informed she was under active federal investigation. She was violently thrown out of the house by Ryan. I watched her stand shell-shocked at the gates of the estate, calling her parents, crying about what happened. Whoever was on the other line clearly didn't want anything to do with a federal suspect. They hung up on her. She dragged her heavy, pregnant body, pulling a single suitcase the maid had tossed out, standing completely alone in the freezing midnight wind, with absolutely nowhere to go. The child in her stomach, once treated as the golden heir, was now her greatest burden and ultimate badge of shame. My father-in-law was rushed to the ER with a severe heart attack. My mother-in-law's mind completely shattered from the trauma, leaving her delirious. The family that tried to suck my blood dry was entirely annihilated overnight. As the director of this entire masterpiece, I calmly gave my statement to the police, then walked away from the mansion that no longer belonged to them. The next day, I hired a professional biohazard and clearing company. They packed up every single item belonging to my ex-in-laws and shipped it to a rundown apartment complex in the city. I changed all the locks and had the entire house deep cleaned and sanitized with industrial chemicals, completely erasing the filthy stain that family had left behind. In the days that followed, the legal machinery turned mercilessly. Carter's company declared bankruptcy. Not only was he facing years in federal prison, but he was permanently saddled with millions in unpayable debt. Chloe's family completely disowned her. The Lincoln Park condo bought with stolen money was seized and auctioned by the government. Penniless, she was forced to rent a dirt-cheap motel room, surviving on whatever tiny savings she had left. I heard she eventually went into premature labor and gave birth to a boy. But not a single person from either family ever went to visit her. After a brief period of depression, Ryan filed for divorce and ruthlessly relinquished all custody rights to the child. Everyone who committed evil was punished exactly as they deserved. Not through screaming, not through catfights, but through the freezing, absolute power of the law. I stopped paying attention to their aftermath because my life had already flipped to a brand new chapter. A month later, the crisp autumn sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my spacious, brilliant corner office. I was in a premium skyscraper in downtown Chicago. Outside the window was the skyline of skyscrapers and the pulsing arteries of the city traffic. I had resigned from my old job as an audit director. Using the capital I pulled back, I launched my own financial consulting firm. Relying on my vast network and flawless reputation, the company hit the ground running in just a month, securing several massive corporate accounts. The coffee on my desk was steaming. My dual monitors displayed pitch decks for a new acquisition. Everything was moving upward. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ryan. "Jessica, I am sorry, and thank you. The divorce is finalized. I am finally free." I looked at the text. I had absolutely zero desire to reply. I calmly held my finger over the screen and tapped delete. Anything related to that family ended right here, right now. I only helped him because he was a victim too, but his apologies and gratitude meant absolutely nothing to me. My life was no longer anchored to that disgusting past. Right then, my phone rang. An unknown number. I picked it up, and a charismatic, professional voice came through the speaker. "Hello, is this Jessica? I am Sam, an executive headhunter. We have a global CFO position at a Fortune 500 company we would love to discuss with you." Before I could answer, there was a knock on my door. My assistant poked her head in, smiling brightly. "Jessica, the florist downstairs just delivered a massive bouquet of champagne roses. They are from the CEO we negotiated with yesterday. He is asking if you are free for dinner tonight." I looked at the brilliant sunlight outside, listened to the incredible career opportunity on the phone, and felt the absolute positive energy surrounding me. The corners of my mouth subconsciously curled up. I spoke into the phone with a clear, wildly confident voice. "I am very interested. Let's schedule a time to talk." I hung up the phone, picked up my coffee, and walked to the glass window, looking down at the city I had conquered. I used to think marriage was a safe harbor, and family was a sanctuary. Only later did I realize it was just a gilded cage, designed to trap me and drain every ounce of my light and warmth. Now, I had smashed that cage with my own hands. Taking out the trash is the cleaning lady's job. I am only responsible for liquidating the bad assets. Right now, I was clean enough to shine.